don't know anything about like the high school basketball there or the level of basketball. Talk about what it was like to grow up in Muscle Shoals and, play basketball and kind of that experience.
So I actually did a podcast on this not too long ago. I'm from Northwest Alabama, and they asked me what that experience was like growing up. And, everyone knows Alabama for football. I mean, it's no secret, right? And I grew up in the northwest corner of Alabama. So it's weird where Alabama has, in different pockets of the state, there's different kinds of basketball, right? So I grew up in Northwest Alabama at the time. Football was dominant. All my friends played football and baseball. So, I was the one that was in the gym. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, what are y'all doing after school? We're going to go run some routes and lift some weights. I'm like, y'all don't want to go shoot any jump shots or anything like that. So that was just something that I had to overcome in my life, just the football aspect of it. But I also feel like the state's a little bit underrated in terms of some of the talent that's here and that comes out of here, just because we're known so much for football.
Yeah. Now, would you say, like, because it was a football state, would you say that the level of competition in your high school level suffered? Or would you say, now that just made it, a lot more athletic because you had those football guys that weren't necessarily, basketball players. We've all seen them before, but the athleticism was there. So would you say that kind of hurt the level of competition a little bit? Or would you say the level of competition was still pretty solid?
I feel like the level of competition was pretty solid because, again, as you mentioned, we definitely had the athletes. We've got the athletes in the state. I just think in terms of basketball, I guess you find more players from Alabama that are raw. Is that the right word
right.
to say?
That's the term I use. Yeah.
Yeah. You, like, for example, North Carolina, I was just looking at this not too long ago on Twitter. I mean, how many players are on active rosters just from the state of North Carolina? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then you look at Alabama in the South. I mean, how many players are on active NFL rosters? So it's just a shift. But in terms of the athleticism, that part's there. So I think the only part that suffered was just the exposure. People don't really think basketball players come from Alabama, but there are some good basketball players here.
I just remember, when I was in high school and we had an AU tournament. I don't know if it was the Peach Jam or where was that? We were playing somewhere down south, and I think it was in Georgia. And I remember there was 2 Alabama teams there, and you probably know the names of them, but I mean, the point guard was probably 6'2". The rest of them was all 6'9". So, I mean, you got some good stuff in the water there in Alabama because you got the athletes and the size there for sure. So, kind of, let's move into, you get out of your high school, you decide you want to go to LSU. Kind of talk your recruiting process a little bit, kind of some of the teams that you were considering, and then, your first 2 years at LSU.
Okay. So coming out of high school, obviously Alabama was on the list. LSU was on the list. Who else was in that list? Butler. Really like Butler.
Butler would have been a good fit.
Brad Stevens. I loved what they were doing up there at Butler. Butler was on my list. Mike Bray at Notre Dame. I went on an official visit to Notre Dame. And they play their style.
I can't even interrupt you because what it sounds like is we had the same recruiting path. So we could have very easily ended up at Butler and Notre Dame together. So, all right, continue on.
So, it's actually a funny story. I ended up going to LSU, but when their head coach, Trent Johnson at the time, he got there in 2008, the spring of 2008, which was my sophomore year in high school. Mm-hmm. And he gets the job and he calls my high school coach. My high school coach is like, Coach Johnson at LSU calls and he's interested in talking to you. And I was like, LSU's cool. They just went to a Final Four a couple years ago, but there's probably no way I'll ever end up at LSU, right?
Yeah.
So long story short, I kind of fell in love with that team and that coach. All right. So I did my homework and I knew Trent Johnson. He was at Stanford. He had the Lopez twins. He had Landry Fields. So he had a great group there at Stanford. Went to a bunch of NCAA tournaments. But I just fell in love with him and what they were trying to do at LSU. Obviously, the next year was 08-09, which was my junior year. They had won the SEC outright. He was the coach of the year. They had the player of the year in Marcus Thornton. They lost in Greensboro in the second round to eventual national champs, I'm not going to say their names. But everything was trending in the right direction. We had 3 out of 4 of us were top 100 recruits. So the future was bright. I went to LSU. I chose it. I felt good about my decision. And I got there, and as well as I know, sometimes the vision that you have going in is not exactly the way things turn out. All in all, I enjoyed my time at LSU. I enjoyed going to school there. I met a lot of great people, but I was just looking for something a little bit more in terms of basketball. Again, to go back to my football analogy, not only Alabama, but the whole Southeast is known for its football.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're at schools like that with dominant football programs, sometimes that can overshadow other programs. And especially guys like me and you love basketball to death. When you go to places like that and all the resources are to basketball, all the focus is on basketball, sometimes that can make the environment not as fun to play.
Yeah.
I'll give you a funny story. So when I came to NC State, I think you guys, my redshirt year, the first game or the exhibition game we played was against Belmont Abbey. Is that right? Does that
It
sound
might
about
have been.
right?
I don't know.
So it was after a football game, and everyone got in for free. And we're talking about an exhibition game. There were more people at that exhibition game that were at any of my SEC games at LSU, not named Kentucky. Everybody wanted to see Kentucky play. But I was looking for the experience, right? Like I
Yeah.
wanted to go to NCAA tournaments. I wanted to play with great players. I wanted to play somewhere where basketball mattered. So I decided to, at the time there was no transfer portal. You had to go to the compliance office and you had to get your release.
Yeah.
They give you this letter, tell you can't go to X, Y, and Z schools. So I get that letter. And I'm just reaching out to people. And Mark Godfrey, who was the coach at Alabama, I had a great relationship with him. He recruited me when I was in high school. I knew him well. I played AAU basketball with his son. So, that was a bridge that I had already crossed in terms of I already know who you are. So I don't have to go through that again.
Yeah.
But I remember telling my parents, I said, I was looking for somewhere that was just an upgrade. That's all I'm looking for is an upgrade. So come to Raleigh, and everybody talking to me about Scott Wood. I'm like, okay, well, who? I've seen Scott Wood play on TV because I did see a few of you guys' games that year, but in 2011, 2012. So I'm like, okay. And they were like, well, Scott Wood's a senior, and after he's gone, we're going to need someone else to step into that role. So I'm like, okay. So there's my playing time opportunity. I'm not saying that it was mine, but there's an opportunity there. So that was the first thing that was important. So I come on a visit to Raleigh, and when I get there, I immediately feel this sense of comfort. Like, okay, something feels good about this, right? So get over to campus, and I'm seeing everything. They're showing me clips of how I fit in with the system. Thomas DeTay and Alex Johnson were the only 2 on campus. I came in the summertime. So they were my hosts, and I was with Levi Watkins. And they're taking me around, and we're in the Dale Center, and I played some pickup basketball. I did the whole 9 yards, but I remember leaving and saying to myself, I was like, Mom, in every way, this is an upgrade. All right. PNC Arena is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal place to play a college basketball game.
Yeah.
The ACC, I mean, it speaks for itself. In my opinion, the toughest basketball conference in college basketball, right? You guys had just come off a Sweet 16 run, and you've got 3 McDonald's All-Americans coming in, and most of you guys returning back. Like, whew.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, I'm sitting there like, how can I say no to this? So that was my decision to come to NC State.